Okay, I just got told I have no sound. Now I have sound. How about that? So I think I will start all over again. Yeah, I'm going to get message after message after message on no sound. Thank you, Hawk. I have no sound. I'm not sure why. And I wasn't sitting in the chat room, so I didn't see it. So, folks, I just want to say welcome to the Captain's Log. Sorry if that. We'll edit that out for the final play when we archive this. But welcome to the Captain's Log. I'm your host, Scotty Roberts. Yes, I was talking. No, I did not have my mic up. So let's get this show on the road. I got to reacclimate myself to where I was. So tonight, the deck feels solid beneath my feet, foot, boots, boot, leg. Well, you get the idea. Singular, leg. But you know what I'm talking about. If you're standing on shaky ground tonight, I've got some good news. You don't need both legs or all the answers to stand strong. The compass is spinning, the wind's up, and somehow I'm still upright. And that counts. And this isn't a storm log, this is a strength log, this Captain's Log tonight. So, Captain's Log, the evening watch, or what did I say earlier? I said I called this something different when I uploaded it. The not the evening watch, the something making headway. So tonight the deck feels solid beneath my boots, my boot, and singular leg, but solid nonetheless. And that's worth noting because solidity isn't about symmetry. It's about balance. It's about learning how to stand firm even when the world insists you shouldn't be able to. But they all try to encourage you to stand firm. And if you're listening tonight from your own unsteady ground, let me say this plainly. If you're upright at all, you're doing something right. The wind is active. It's not hostile. It's not gentle. Just alive. The compass needle wobbles like it's deciding whether to tell the truth. And I let it. I don't force north. I don't demand certainty. A spinning compass doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're between headings. And between headings is where strength is built. And I've got the cat up here. He never, ever comes on my desk. And now he chooses this moment to come on my desk. So there was a time when I believed strength required clarity, that it required a plan. I'm strong. I need a plan. I need clarity. I need a timeline. I got to map this out. I got to know where I'm going. A destination you could point to and say, there, this is where I'm going. And you know what? I know better now. Strength doesn't necessarily mean all of those things. Strength is staying present when the map goes quiet. Strength isn't chasing the horizon when your footing matters more. Strength is knowing you can be okay, even solid, even while parts of your life are still unresolved. Wow. How many of you are in that position right now tonight? And pardon my cough. I didn't hunt answers today. I wanted some answers today. I didn't go seeking them. I didn't go hunt them. I didn't interrogate the future. I stayed with what was real. Breath, balance, resolve. And here's the thing. They held, and I held. This is for you guys. If you're tired tonight, that doesn't mean you're weak. If you're unsure, it doesn't mean you're failing. If you're healing physically, emotionally, spiritually, it doesn't mean you're behind. It means you're moving, you're in motion. And there's a quiet authority in restraint, in choosing not to say the thing that would cost you peace, in holding a boundary without sharpening it into a weapon, in loving deeply without demanding immediate return. That kind of strength doesn't announce itself, but it endures. I'll just give you a hint. I had some stuff going on with my 14-year-old daughter today. And all of this falls into place for her. And it ended gentle and loving and kind, authoritative, and a good daughter-dad relationship. So, wherever you're listening from tonight, your kitchen, after everyone's gone to bed, a hospital room humming softly, being interrupted every 2.5 hours by nurses, a parked car with the engine off, a porch under the cold stars. This log is for you. I'm sorry about that. It's my throat stuff. You're not late. You're not broken. You're not standing still. This today is not the end of the voyage. It's a position fix. The ship still answers your hand. The deck still knows your weight. The stars haven't gone anywhere. And tomorrow, whether it brings calm seas or a stiff wind, you'll meet it on your feet. And the word has been given on that. I have some affirmations for us that I want to share with you. Pardon me 1 second. I got that tracheal stuff, as you all know, and it sticks in there sometimes. Sorry, it's right now during the show. Just like my cat crawling up here for the first time ever. I got the cough. It hits me right now, of course, instead of some other point. So let's look at this for tonight. I've got your affirmations. Affirmation number 1. I am steady, even when my direction is still just forming. I don't need perfection to move forward. Catch that? I don't need to be perfect. I don't need perfection. I don't even know what I'm looking at, where I'm going, but I can still move forward. Strength can be quiet and still be real. And I trust my balance, even in transition. And I'm doing better than I think I am. Because sometimes what holds us up the most, it's our thoughts about where we are, what I've done. Have I done the right thing? Have I done the wrong thing? Have I said the right thing, said the wrong thing, made the right moves? So, here's the benediction. May you rest tonight without replaying every what if in your mind. And we're filled with them every day. Admit it to yourself. There are things, what if we can rest without replaying all our what ifs. May your breath deepen and your shoulders loosen and your heart remember what it already knows. I get a flash of Mufasa from The Lion King. Remember who you are. So may the wind meet you kindly, and when it doesn't, may you remember you are still standing, and this ship is still yours. So go in strength and go in peace and stay the course. Now, everyone, stick around for a little bit of a captain's cabin. If you are over there on Instagram, we're going to say goodnight to you. But first, I'm going to give you a link where you can go and join the program. You can join over on our YouTube channel. That's where you're going to be able to see it. That's where you're going to be able to chat. So let me call it up here. There it was. I don't know if you heard that. It was my little flashback, my little time traveler there. So over there in Instagram, I'm going to paste this right here. Boom. There's the link. And, oops, there it is. There's the link. Hello, everybody over there. Chris Rufert, good to see you. Aaron Lapointe, good to see you. Leon, I still don't know exactly how to say your name. And Snowwit is over there. And all of you, come on over to the YouTube channel at that link I just posted, and you can join our live chat. But for now, Instagram, saying goodbye to you. See ya. All right. Discard the video. I wish Instagram would save those videos, but it doesn't. Stay the course is right. So, guys, I may have a little bit of a abbreviated Captain's Cabin tonight, only because my kids are here, and it's their first night of our week on, week off. Now, they were here Saturday night. If you're on my Facebook or any of my Instagram and stuff, you saw some of the photos over there. And they wanted to come over on Saturday and hang out and bring all their friends. So I had my 3 kids and 5 other kids from school that they go to school with. And so we had 8 kids here. Also had 8 kids in the king-size crew cab of my truck. 8 kids rode over here. And I remember Rainey texting me. She said, "You took all the kids, all 8 kids over there in your truck?" I said, "I sure did." And I kept them out of the back bed. So, yeah, we had a good time. They had a good time. They all spent the night. And believe it or not, by midnight, it was stone quiet around here. But then the 2 girls went home. They wanted to get stuff. Flynn stayed again last night. And today starts the first week of our week on, week off schedule. So we'll be here Monday to Monday. My kids will be here. And then next week, they'll be at their mom's. And so it makes my life just slightly busier this week, just till we get acclimated. They've always seen me do radio shows. My kids have watched, you've seen them. They come traipsing in when I would do Intrepid Radio, doing their antics. Their friends would come in with them and all wave. And I'm like, I'm doing radio here, guys. And so I'm surprised. One of them came over here and stood over here for a minute, didn't say a word. I think it was Flynn. He has the way to do that. My son, my 16-year-old, kind of quiet. Sometimes you're just sitting there and you'll look up, you're working, you look up and he's standing there. What do you need, Flynn? Because he doesn't say anything. He just stands there and waits for me to acknowledge him. And I say, you can say something, just say it. But when I'm on the radio, he's learned not to. So they're here tonight. I don't want to just abandon them until 11 o'clock and I'm in bed before I say goodnight and stuff like that. So I took them out to Chinese buffet tonight. And it's kind of interesting. I had a full plate of rice and broccoli and chicken and all of that stuff, an egg roll. And I had some hot, sweet and spicy soup, or like one of their Chinese soup things. Man, was that good. I could have just eaten that. The broth was amazing. Chai buff. Yep, you saw it, Michelle. So we went to Chai buff tonight. And well, the funny thing is, I got it. I got that big plate with all the veggies and all the stir fry stuff just mounded up. And my daughter got mac and cheese and 3 wontons, but they're both the same price because you're at the buffet. And I used to be able to put down 2, sometimes 3 plates of that stuff. Tonight, I got about halfway through, and I'm like, I'm done. And then I got the soup, and I did the broth on the soup. That was good. And then I ended up picking away and picked most of the chicken and rice off of my plate. So I am stuffed out of my ever-loving head tonight. So, whew, man. So we had a good time. So we'll do a little shorter Captain's Cabin. That's all that was about. Saying all that. And Field Guy, good to see you here tonight. Of course, Barbie D, good to see you too. And Michelle, muted, she says. Yes, I am muted. I was muted. I hate doing that. I turned off my mic for a reason. And I said, just be sure you turn it on, Scotty, after you start the show. And sure enough, I left it. So sorry about that. Thanks for sticking around. Rapid Dog, good to see you. And Joshua Kemp is here. And Roger is here. Johan Dancing Gypsy is here. Good to see you. And who else we got? Steph Cuervo Queen. Yes, and we started over, Steph. I only got a minute or so in, so that's good. Started seeing messages just popping up on my computer. So, who else we got in here tonight? Those are mostly all our regulars are already here and doing their thing. And I'm just scrolling down to see if we've got anybody else to say good evening to. And Scotty Allen is here. Good to see you, Scotty. And who else we got? I don't think anybody different. And if I missed you, it's only because I missed you. Not out of intent. Still scrolling. Tracy Sparks is here. Good to see you, Tracy. Nice to have you aboard. And so there we go. We're a little bit caught up with who's here on greetings and so on. So tonight's log, just give you a little more insight on that. And by the way, if you want to call in, guess what? You can. We say the same thing every night. And every now and then, we have a person call in. If you want to talk about tonight's log, specifically, and what I'm talking about maintaining your stance, about feeling like, there's been a storm, I'm starting to come out of it. Not everything's resolved. Not all the grief is gone. Not all the pain is gone. You might still have a big hole in your chest, but you know what? You're standing. And you know where you stand. You know what you got to do. And you're doing it. And sometimes it's stuff that is just so much stuff that you never thought you'd have to ever face in your life. And here you are. I had 2025 for me was a year of having things happen that I never, ever foresaw or anticipated would ever happen to me. And it's taken a while to get to this place. So, and you all saw it. So I appreciate you being here and sticking it out with me. And so all of us have those things that we have to do that are like that to us. And we've got to realize that we have the ability to stand on our own 2 feet and make it. And sometimes we have to find ways to get the shadow out of us. And I want to talk about that just a little tiny bit because I think it's helpful for everybody. All you listen close. I went to my doc last week, about a week ago. It was a week ago today. And I had a couple of things I had questions on. But one of the big things I wanted to ask him about was I said, look, Doc, I do not have a depressive personality. I don't get depressed. I'm upbeat. I'm always tend to always be positive, even when I get passionate and it sounds like I'm not. And I said, this whole thing, this last year, everything that's gone on, I said, I, I and it was this hard to say. I said, I think I'm depressed. I said, I'm just in a depression. And as I said it, just saying the word broke my emotions. And um, so I said, Doc, is there anything I can be taking? I said, because I am not coming up out of this. And I'm pretty sure most of you noticed it in me. And I said, I think I need help with this. And so, and I said, I'm very reluctant to ask this because I've never had to do this before. And he said, look, when you had your heart attack and you had the bypass surgery, the open heart surgery, he says, could you have done that yourself just by trying to figure it out? No. He says, you needed a doctor to do that. When you broke your leg, you needed a doctor. When you had anything else going on, problems with blood pressure, you needed a doctor. You needed to take some meds for it. And those helped you. He says, same thing with this. He said, depression is a chemical imbalance in your brain. And it's not just the external emotions and all the stuff you go through, how we react sometimes. And I don't know this, don't quote me. It's either created or has been created by this chemical imbalance. You're creating it with everything that's gone on. And I got to tell you, folks, I had a tough time crawling out of that hole. And I'm still crawling out of that hole. But he gave me a little something. He gave me some meds that I like to say they aren't my happy pills. They're just my not so unhappy pills. And it's a low grade antidepressant. And he says, and it also will, they kind of use this drug too when people want to try to quit smoking. It takes away the urge to smoke. And I said, oh, cool, fringe benefit. So I started taking these meds a week ago. So I've had them in my system now 6 or 7 days. And almost the first day, I was talking to Hawk on the first or second day. And I said, dude, I'm feeling this already. I don't feel any different except I'm cheerier. The same knowledge of everything is in my mind. I'm not lacking in thinking capacity. Everything's the same, except my brain is now not sinking me into a hole over everything, even though the knowledge of it all is still there. And Hawk, who is also an EMT, he knows about drugs and stuff, and he said, yeah, that's starting to work. Give it a week and see where you're at. And so it's like today with my daughter. She was really going at it, and I went at it with her. And I said, I raised my voice, and she hung up on me, and so I instantly called Rainey to say, all right, I need you to talk to her and let her know you and I are on the same page on this, that we are acting as parents who are doing the same thing. And I said, that's why I'm calling you today. We gotta show her a unified front as parents on this issue. And she said she would do just that. And she did. Because one of the last things my daughter said to me was, I don't even like you. I hate you, and I'm not going to come and move to your house. You think I want to go? I'm not going to your house. Click. And so I told Rainey all about that. And so she's been having some issues this last year, my daughter, and We're trying to get her through it all. And so, did I get impassioned with my daughter? Yes, I did. And I raised my voice. Imagine you're my kid and we're on the phone, and I said, "Hey, hey, hey." I said, "I am trying to complete a sentence with you. If you want to have a conversation with me, then allow the conversation to be two-sided." I used that tone of voice. And then I said something to the effect of, I said, "I won't be talked over." I said, "If you want to talk over me, then we'll do this another time." And so I was stern as a parent, my expectations spelled out. And then she hung up on me and all that, of course. And so, um, and we ended up working it out. It was over. She wrote me back. And then I said, "I won't text you on this." I said, "If you want to talk about this issue," I said, "I will take your phone call, but I'm not going to talk about it in text." And she eventually called me and we had a good conversation. We worked it all out. I said, "Look, daughter of mine," I said, "as angry as you are and as all of this," I said, "you know what?" I said, "You know I love you and you know you love me. There's our starting point. We love each other. I'm your dad. You're my daughter." I said, "There's our starting point. Because we love each other, we're going to be courteous of each other, polite to each other, respect each other." And I said, "If we can't do that, we might as well not talk." I said, "So do you think we can do that together? You think we can manage that?" And yeah, we can. I said, "I know we can." And it was better. So um, so that was a good thing. And so my point from the very beginning of that was I can get impassioned. I can even get angry. But you know what I don't do? It's not sinking me today. My feet are steady. Same thing with all the stuff: leg, divorce, illness, money, all of that stuff still puts a hole in my chest. But you know what? I'm not falling into it. It's still there. I just know the boundaries of it now. And I know that is what the medication has done for me. It has cleared up my brain enough to where I can look at things and say, I know how to deal with that. I'm good. And I don't let it sink me. So, um, so there we go. So I feel good today. I feel good tonight. I hope I'm not coming across like I'm weird and drugged out or anything like that, because I'm not. And so it's nice. Yeah, I am too, Steph. I'm glad she backed me on that. And she wants to, and I'll back her on stuff too. And so that's just one little facet of everything that's going on. And so my strength is now in my ability to not let some of these things carry me away. And because like I said, I got to tell you, folks, 2025, I never want to have another year like that. And if I do, please, God, take me. I don't want to do that again. And nothing in 2025 seemed to be a good thing at all. I mean, it had its points, its highlights, but the whole year was a to be flushed year. And so coming out of that, the way I did in January when I finally moved here, the 1st of January, and it was a whole new thing. And my entire life got beat up in 2025, and I had to try to scrape my way out of that in January of this year. And I was not succeeding. I was doing all the outward things to make it happen, but it was a rough go. And so all of that to reiterate, I finally went to my doc, and he said, I can help you with that. Take some of these. Low dose. He says, take it for a few weeks, see what it does for you. And he says, if you have any adverse effects, just let me know. Of course. And then that's when I think I shared it on this show. I've never had a doctor do this with me before, but he saw me and I was in his office telling him I was depressed. And I said, that's hard for me to say because I'm not that kind of person. And I'm just tears. You've seen me cry on this show. I mean, it was tears. It was, I couldn't hold it back. And he sat there with his elbows on his knees like this, just listening to me. And he said to me when I was done talking, he says, Scotty, he says, can I pray for you? I said, yeah, you can. And this is the doctor I've been seeing probably almost 15 years. He's been my doctor. And he knows everything there is to know about me. He knows Rainey. He knows all my kids. And he sat there and he prayed for me. And I thought, that's something you don't have doctors do very much. And then he prescribed me drugs. So, hey, anonymously, 1122, good to see you. I don't know who you are off the top of my head, but thank you for being here. And yes, it's a great story. It was a great, again, at my age, to never have faced this kind of thing before was, it was tough for me. So, but it's gotten me through. Anonymous smokes weed. I do too, but not regularly enough. I got no problem with weed, I can tell you that. So, somebody else was just asking me today if I smoked weed. So, aloha Barb, says anonymously 1122. Andrew Specht is here. Hey, Scotty. Still in my prayers for guidance and strength to persevere. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And a lot. Please keep it up. There's a lot of people in my life that need prayer right now. It's awfully different. Never been in this place before in my life. So all of that to say, I'm standing. I'm good. And the drugs helped. Thank you, Doc. It helped pull me up over that ledge I couldn't seem to scramble over, where I've never been before. And that's why in my 65 years of life, I've never had to deal with this stuff like this before. I mean, I was married once before and divorced 25 years ago. And I have my 3 older kids from that marriage, but it was not like this. So it was this, it was the leg, it was all that. And I don't need to reiterate. I don't need to keep hammering on the same point. All that to say, there was depression I have never experienced before. And if I can, I had a pastor say to me once, he said, and it wasn't about me we were talking, but he said, sometimes, he says, drugs is the way to fix a chemical imbalance. He says, some people don't want to be the diagnosed patient. They don't want to accept the fact that there's a chemical imbalance going on. And just like having a doctor set a broken bone, sometimes you need a doctor to prescribe a medication that's going to fix that chemical imbalance. And so that's what this did for me. So hard to know the difference between depression and grief. That's very true. And I was in both very deeply. So going on 39 years married. Congratulations. I was on 21. So Paca, I don't have my glasses on. Pacalolo helps. Antidepressants made me worse. I don't know what Pacalolo is. You can call in and tell us all about it. Here, by the way, is the link for anybody who wants to call into the show, share the screen with me, or just have your icon share the screen with me, and we'll hear your voice. Oops. Yeah, there we go. Boom. There's the link to call into the show. Oh, pakalolo is weed in Hawaiian. Ah, gotcha. So are you in Hawaii now? Anonymously? So what's everybody want to talk about tonight? I've been talking since I've been on air. 40 minutes. Only a minute and a half of it, I think, is silent. So who wants to talk about stuff? What do you got? What's on your mind? Hey, Scotty, do you think the age difference became an issue? Well, I don't want to talk about details of this, but I will say that I'm no older than her now than I was the day we met 21 years ago. So I was just as much older than her. Now, she is now about the age I was when we met. So I think I'm not going to say. I'm not going to talk about it on this show. I really am not. So it never seemed to be the age difference never seemed to be an issue with us ever. Unless I was missing signals along the way. It was always, we never looked that much different in age until probably I hit 50 and a little older than 50, 55. It started to show a little bit. And I think the heart stuff combined with having a hip replaced the next year, combined with having the flu over a year ago and having this whole thing start this last year as a result of that, and losing my leg, all of that brought a certain mortality to bear, I think, on our relationship. We'll leave it at that. So there you go. Yeah, full moon tonight. Big, powerful tonight. So so Tracy Sparks, no disrespect at all. Just something, we'll leave that there. You're welcome. I will say no up to this point. It never seemed to be. So, all right. Anybody else? What do you want to talk about? Who wants to call in and talk a little bit? God ain't done with you yet, Scotty. Boy, ain't that the truth? That's the truth. I believe that anonymously. So, anonymously, by any chance, do I know who you are? You don't have to say it in the show. Have I talked to you before? Do I know you? Just curious. So, what art projects are you working on these days? Scotty, I'm working on a big Bible book right now. It's a big book that's gonna, it's gonna be almost, I got this sitting here. It's gonna be like this, and like the big Harry Potter books that are fully illustrated. Like you see, these are all illustrated throughout. This is the whole novel, the Harry Potter novel. It's all illustrated. So we're using this as kind of a model, and it's going to be about this size, big, heavy book. And it's called the Oracle Bible and subtitled The Stories from the Bible You Never Knew You Never Knew. And I like that. That had a great ring to it. And when we were brainstorming, the stories from the Bible you never knew you never knew. And it's the kind of stuff we'd always talk about on Intrepid Radio. All those stories from the Bible that, wait a minute, there's a little different way to look at this story. if you look at it not just spiritually or theologically, but you look at it anthropologically, archaeologically, historically, contextually, all of that stuff. And so it's a bunch of stories that are written in that respect. And I was contacted. It was an old high school buddy of mine I hadn't talked to in over 40 years. And he wanted to do this book. And so he hired me to do all the art. And I ended up doing a lot of the writing with him for the Old Testament stories. And then he kind of took over the New Testament. His doctorate is in New Testament theology. And so I got to write a lot of this stuff with him for the Old Testament stories. And it just neat stuff, things you don't think about in the story. Here, I'm going to give you a taste. How about that? How about a little taste? And let's do it this way. Let me find this. This is the first story that I wrote with him. And let me go here. All right. Bear with me as I call this up. I haven't had to look at this since the day we wrote it, but I've got it all in this file. We will go. I have to go to Oracle Bible. Where did I? Oracle Bible 3. Where did I put that? And why wouldn't it be in? Why wouldn't it be in there? Psalm, Daniel in the dream. Hang on. I'm going to do a little search for this in my files. Search chats. Abraham and Isaac. Oracle Bible Project. Abraham and Isaac story. Hang on. I got to see if it's here. Sorry for the silence, guys. If I'd have thought about this ahead of time, I would have looked it up then. But listen to me babble a little bit while I'm searching for this. Abraham and Isaac, the Nephilim explanation, Nephilim edit, Oracle Bible Project. This was in December. Hope it's not gone. I know where to find it. Hold on. I got it in a different place. So we'll go here, and we'll go here, and I'm kind of set. I saw some of the other stories we did, but I really want to find this particular story because I liked it. It was the first one we did. Pardon me, I got to put on my glasses. All right. Here's some of the stories we did. Elijah and the prophets of Baal, Psalm 22 and 30, the 70 weeks, bedtime Daniel, Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar's dream, Absalom, David anoints Solomon, David and Bathsheba, the rise of King David, David in the wilderness, David, Goliath, and Saul, David and Goliath, anointing of David, the woman in the dust, Jesus writes in the dust, Ruth and Boaz, Deborah, Samson, Othniel, plagues in the Red Sea, Babel, the great flood, the fiery furnace, Daniel in the lion's den, Joseph, Jericho, Memphis, Moses kills the Egyptian, Mount Nebo, Aaron challenge, the tabernacle, and looking for where else we've got. That's odd. I don't see. Oh, Abraham and Isaac. Here we go. All right. This is going to give you a little bit of a flavor of what this Oracle Bible is going to be like. Now, we wanted it to be, Dan wanted to do Bible stories that were illustrated. And I said, oh, an illustrated Bible story book? That's new. I said, Dan, you're going to find 2,000 of them on the bookshelves already. What we got to do is find a way to make it stand out so it's different than everything else out there. And that's where we eventually came up with the stories you never knew. I said, expand a little bit. Give people more than just the Bible story. I said, you just do a Bible story with a picture, it's a devotional, and that's it. I said, you don't want to do that. You want to give it something. And so here is the story that I wrote with Dan. I kind of ghost wrote some of these for him, but then he went back in and he made some of his own changes. Here it is. I want you to hear this. This is how it will appear in the book. The mountain of the Lord. The desert morning broke pale and soundless, a stillness that pressed against Abraham's chest as he rose before dawn. The coals of last night's fire glowed faintly behind him. Nearby, Isaac slept curled on his side, his dark hair spread like ink across the blanket. Abraham's eyes lingered there longer than they should have, the boy's chest rising and falling, each breath a reminder of the promise that had rewritten an old man's life. He turned his face toward the east. The sky there was bruising into color. Take your son, the voice had said, your only son whom you love, and offer him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. Abraham had known that voice for half his lifetime. The same voice that had promised him descendants like the stars, that had led him from Ur to Canaan, that had opened Sarah's barren womb. He had argued with it once, bargained for Sodom, even laughed in disbelief at its promises, but he had never mistaken it. He knew when heaven spoke. Still that morning, his hands trembled as he bound the packs to a donkey. Isaac stirred. Father? Abraham forced his voice steady. We must go, my son. We have a journey. The boy sat up, rubbing his eyes. He was 12, old enough to notice the knife and the bundle of wood, but still young enough to trust without question. His faith was uncomplicated, untested. His father's would not be so. They traveled 3 days in silence, across scorched hills and valleys brittle with thorns. The wind carried the scent of dust and iron. Each night Abraham lay awake, watching the boy sleep, feeling the ache settle deeper into his bones. Each morning he rose before dawn and prayed for the command to be lifted. But the heavens remained silent, the same heavens that had once thundered with promise. On the third day, the mountain rose before them, Moriah, its ridges sharp as a blade against the sky. Abraham stopped and felt something break inside him. His servants who had followed at a distance watched his face fall silent. And fell silent. Stay here, he said finally, his voice cracking like dry earth. The boy and I will go yonder and worship, and then we will come back to you. He loaded the wood upon Isaac's back. The boy shouldered it obediently, not knowing it was to bear him. Abraham took the knife and the fire in his hands, and together they climbed. Halfway up, Isaac spoke. Father, we have the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the offering? Abraham's throat tightened. The world blurred at the edges. He turned his face away before answering. God himself will provide the lamb, my son. The words fell from him like stones. He wanted to believe them. Perhaps he did. They reached the summit near midday. The air was thin there, silent except for the whisper of wind through scrub. Abraham built the altar slowly, one stone at a time, every motion deliberate, as if delay could somehow change destiny. Isaac helped, carrying rocks, arranging them neatly. When the last stone was set, Abraham stood there for a long moment, unable to breathe. Then he turned to his son. Isaac, he said softly. The boy looked up, smiling faintly, proud of their work. Forgive me, Lord, Abraham thought, for what I must now do. He reached for the cords with hands that no longer felt like his own. Isaac's eyes widened, confusion flashing into fear. Father? Abraham caught him gently, his voice breaking. It's all right, my son. Trust me. The boy did not fight. He had never known his father to harm him, yet tears streaked his cheeks as Abraham bound his wrists. The rope coarse against his young skin. Abraham laid him upon the altar, upon the wood he had carried. The knife gleamed above them, sunlight catching on its edge. Abraham's heart was a storm. He saw Sarah's laughter when Isaac was born. He saw the stars God had shown him, the covenant of generations unborn. And he saw this, his hand raised against his own flesh, obedience cutting deeper than the blade itself. Lord, he whispered, you gave him to me. If you ask for him back, I will not withhold it. The wind stilled. Time itself seemed to hold its breath. Then a voice, sharp as lightning, yet full of mercy, Abraham! He froze. Here am I. Do not lay your hand on the boy, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. Abraham's knees gave way. The knife fell from his hand. And from somewhere behind him came the sudden rustle of branches, a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. He stared through his tears, laughter and sobbing mingling as he cut Isaac free. The boy collapsed into his arms, shaking, weeping. Abraham held him tight, his beard wet with tears, whispering over and over, the Lord will provide, the Lord will provide. Together, they offered the ram upon the altar, the smoke rising into the quiet sky. The smell of the sacrifice mingled with the scent of thorn bush, sharp and sweet. And Abraham called that place Adonai Yireh, the Lord will provide. For on the mount of the Lord it was provided. And as they descended, Isaac walked close beside his father, silent but changed. Abraham's eyes were hollowed yet bright, as though he had seen both the heart of God and the cost of faith. The sun was sinking behind them, the mountain casting long shadows across the valley. Far below, the servants saw them and rose to meet them, relief flooding their faces. Is all well, my lord? One asked. Abraham looked toward the horizon, where the day's last light burned gold. He placed his hand on Isaac's shoulder and nodded once. All is well, he said softly. God has provided the lamb. And though the words were for that day alone, heaven already knew they spoke of another, a greater offering yet to come. So that was the first story that we wrote for this book. And Dan's taken over the New Testament, and he's working on that. And we have all of these stories that we've put together. And now my nose is stuffy. But what time is it? 9:56. I will read one more story if you'll have it. I'm trying to think of one of the ones that I really enjoyed. Let's see. I've got so many of them here. I've got the tabernacle. I've got Aaron challenged, Mount Nebo. Moses kills the Egyptian. Jericho. Joseph, the dreamer, who became Pharaoh's Grand Vizier. I wonder if this is the one I'm thinking of. Okay, let's try this. You guys up for one more bedtime story before I go? These are all from this book. This is all about Joseph. And I'll hit some of the history of this before we go tonight when I'm done reading this story, but hear this one out. See what you think. The dreamer who became Pharaoh's shadow. This is from Genesis 37 through 50. All right. Clear my nose. I'm all stuffy. The dreamer's robe caught the sun like fire against the hills of Canaan. It was a coat of many colors, woven by his father's love and his mother's memory. Jacob had given it to his son Joseph, the child of his old age, and Rachel's womb, and every thread of it told the brothers what they already feared, that his son was the chosen one. Their hearts curdled with envy. They heard him speak of dreams, sheaves of grain bowing down, stars bending in reverence, and hatred burned hotter than the desert wind. When Jacob sent Joseph to find them in the fields of Dothan, they saw him coming from afar and said, "Here comes the dreamer. Let's kill him and see what becomes of his dreams." Nice brothers, huh? But instead, they cast him into a dry pit, its walls echoing his cries. The eldest, Reuben, faltered. Judah saw a caravan approaching from Gilead, Ishmaelite traders with balm and myrrh bound for Egypt. "What profit in blood?" he said. And they sold their brother for 20 pieces of silver, watching him vanish into the dust. They tore his robe, ripped it in goat's blood, and laid it before their father. Jacob's cry split the camp. He rent his garments, ashes in his hair, mourning until his voice broke. "My son is torn to pieces," he wept, and the old man's spirit went down into Sheol in grief that would not be comforted. The traders sold Joseph to a man named Potiphar, captain of the Pharaoh's guard, a man of stone and discipline, his house a hive of power. Joseph served faithfully. Everything he touched prospered. Even Potiphar's gaze softened. But in the upper rooms, another pair of eyes followed him, Potiphar's wife. Painted, perfumed, hungry. She was beauty woven with appetite. Day after day she whispered, "Lie with me." And each day Joseph answered, "How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? You're my master's wife." At last she caught his cloak as he turned away. He tore free and ran, leaving the garment in her hand. Better shame than surrender. Her voice rose in the house like a serpent's cry. When Potiphar heard, rage lit his face, but his sword stayed sheathed. In Egypt, the punishment for such an act was death. Yet Potiphar only cast Joseph into the prison of the royal guard, the one under his own command. He had seen truth in the young man's eyes, though his silence cost him everything. The keeper of dreams. In the dim corridors of that prison, years melted into dust. Joseph prayed until his voice grew hoarse. He wrestled with doubt, with ache of betrayal, brothers' laughter, his father's face, the taste of dust in the pit. But even there, the Lord was with him. Two prisoners shared his cell. Pharaoh's cupbearer and Pharaoh's baker. Fallen from favor, both. They dreamed strange dreams, and Joseph, weary but faithful, listened. "The cup," he said to the first, is your life will be restored. The basket, he told the other, is your life taken. And it came to pass as he had said. Joseph asked only this: Remember me when it is well with you. But the cupbearer forgot until 2 years later, when Pharaoh dreamed of 7 fat cows devoured by 7 gaunt, of full ears and withered. Then the cupbearer spoke, I remember my faults this day. There was a Hebrew youth, servant of the captain of the guard, who interprets dreams. Pharaoh sent for him in prison, and Joseph, shaved and clothed in white linen, stood before the throne of the shepherd kings, the Hyksos. Semitic rulers who had risen quietly in Egypt's north. For centuries they'd settled in the delta, traders and shepherds from Canaan, until power passed to them in the north like water fills a hollow. The Hyksos ruled from Avaris, while the native pharaohs lingered far to the south in Thebes. These kings called themselves the shepherds of the two lands, despising the Egyptians who despised them. Pharaoh said, I have heard it said that you can interpret dreams. Joseph bowed. It is not me, he said. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. He spoke of famine and plenty, of a world soon to hunger, and Pharaoh's eyes filled with awe. He placed his ring upon Joseph's hand, clothed him in gold and linen, and named him Zaphnath-Paneah, the God who speaks and lives. The shadow beside the throne. Under Joseph's rule, as Grand Vizier, Egypt became the storehouse of nations. Granaries rose like mountains, caravans came from every land, and Pharaoh gave him Asenath, his daughter, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, as wife, and Joseph ruled with wisdom, a shepherd's heart in a statesman's robes. But famine does not spare the innocent. In Canaan, Jacob's camp starved. So the old man sent his sons to Egypt for grain. They bowed before the vizier, not knowing the brother they betrayed knelt only steps away. Joseph's breath caught. The faces of his brothers, lined now, familiar and foreign, broke him. Memory surged. The pit, the cloak, the cries. For years he had buried that pain under the weight of command, but grief rose like flood water. He spoke harshly, testing them. He accused them of spying, bound Simeon, demanded they bring Benjamin, the youngest, and when they returned with him, Joseph's restraint cracked like pottery. He dismissed his servants, turned away, and wept so loudly the halls echoed. When he faced them again, his eyes were red but gentle. He looked at them and said, I am Joseph, your brother. Is my father well? Is he still alive? They shrank in terror. But he said, Don't be afraid or grieved that you sold me. God sent me before you to preserve life. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. The brothers fell into his arms. Forgiveness replaced famine. Then there's the shepherd kings. Pharaoh, pleased with Joseph's kin, granted them the rich plains of Goshen, the pasture lands of the delta. Joseph had told them wisely, when you stand before Pharaoh, say you are shepherds, for Egyptians despise shepherds. And Pharaoh smiled, for the Hyksos were shepherds themselves, kinsmen of the Canaanites, brothers in the blood of nomads. So Israel's family flourished, cradled in the lap of empire. But the wheel of time turned. The Hyksos people fell. The native pharaohs rose again in the south, and the memory of Joseph's favor curdled into fear. The children of Israel grew numerous and were enslaved by those who no longer remembered the dreamer who saved their land. Centuries later, at Avaris, beneath the ruins of Pyrameses, archaeologists unearthed a palace with 12 columns and 13 tombs. One tomb was grander than the rest. Its statue bore the crook and flail of high office. Its face painted the yellow hue Egyptians used for Asiatics. Its robe, a mosaic of many colors. The statue's head had been smashed in antiquity, perhaps when a people departed in haste, carrying bones long kept in honor. For Joseph had sworn an oath, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. The tomb stands empty now, open to the desert wind. Stone remembers what men forgot, and somewhere in the silence, between grain and sand, a voice still whispers, You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. There you go. So, I was going to talk more about these people, but there was a statue that was discovered. And there are many of my theological friends, seminary professors, that Dr. Charles Ayling, who was the head of history at Northwestern after my seminary days, and he wrote a book on Egypt and Bible history. He was an archaeologist. He's the one that originally got me interested in biblical archaeology and the story of Moses. And he even believes that this statue they found that was smashed to bits was more than probably the statue of Joseph from the Old Testament. Joseph in the coat of many colors. And the statue is I wonder, you know what? I had some media in here that had some of those old pictures that were uploaded here. I wonder if I still have them. Maybe not. They were in here. So comments, private chat, people, notes. Nope. But the interesting thing was this statue was found in a tomb, one of 13 tombs. Would have been the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 brothers were all buried there, and the 13th child, the youngest, and then Joseph himself. And the palace was as it was described in the Bible, his palace as the Grand Vizier, in Avaris, which was up across the Nile, a day's boat ride from Memphis, which was the capital of the Hyksos kings of Egypt. And what else about that? Everything seemed to match. And the statue, it seemed to match. Somebody of high office, but not a pharaoh. Grand viziers were considered pharaoh in the place of pharaoh. And so the story really converged and came together. And Avaris would have been the city in Goshen where the Hebrews dwelt. So when years later, hundreds of years, a couple hundred years later, at least, when Moses came to deliver the people, it said he spoke to Pharaoh one day, and that same day he spoke to the leaders of the Hebrews in Goshen. Well, he hopped on the boat and they went up the Grand Nile Canal carved by the kings of Egypt. And they were in Avaris that afternoon. And that's where the Exodus would have taken place from. They would have exited from there. And so it's very interesting history. You go there now, Avaris was renamed Pyramses by Ramses II, and which came about 150 years after Moses. Now, he was not the Pharaoh of the Exodus. Just going to tell you that here and now. Ramses II, nope, too late in history. It was Amenhotep II, back 150 years. And But the interesting thing is that the Bible says the Hebrews built the treasure cities of Pithom and Ramses. Why would it say that if Ramses hadn't even been born yet? Well, because the writers of that book, or the writer of that book, and the rewriters during the 4th or 5th century at the Library of Alexandria, that's how they knew of Varus back then. Oh, that's the city of Ramses, or Pi-Ramses, Pithom and Ramses. And it's like, it would be like, but what was underneath was the city of Avaris, which was the original city of Joseph and the Hebrew slaves. It would be like in St. Paul, Minnesota. St. Paul is now known as St. Paul. It started as a logging town called Pig's Eye. Now, does anybody call it Pig's Eye nowadays? No. But if you're writing about Pig's Eye, you say St. Paul, which was formerly known as Pig's Eye, and so on. That's the way you look at Avaris. So it's interesting stuff. I won't get into a history lesson tonight. So very interesting stuff. Johan, I'm not rushing too much, I don't think. So remember to breathe. I can't breathe through my nose suddenly. So I want to blow my nose, but I can't do it on camera and on mic. So let's see. Yeah, me too, Johan. I love the story about the coat of many colors. It's a couple of illustrations per story. Some of them have 2 and 3 and 4 illustrations, kind of sequential. Like we've got the story of Jesus writing in the sand when the men all dragged this woman caught in adultery in the very act. They said, she's to be stoned by the law. What do you say we should do? And what does it say Jesus did? It says he stooped down and with his finger he wrote in the dust. It doesn't tell us what he wrote. And then he stood up, and they're all looking at what he wrote. And he said the famous line, "Let you who is without sin cast the first stone at this woman." Grew silent. The men all dropped their stones on the floor of the temple there, temple court, and they all walked away. But as they're doing that, Jesus had stooped down again and we continued writing in the dust. And he looks up at the woman, he sees her, and he looks around. He says, "Woman, where are your accusers?" And she said, "They all fled." And that's where he looked at her. He says, something about condemnation. He says, "Neither do I condemn you. Now go. You do the same. Go. But don't do this anymore. Sin no more." And the story of the woman caught in adultery. I always thought it was interesting. They didn't drag the guy caught in adultery, just the woman. And they dragged her to the temple to see Jesus. Now, the big question always was, and we addressed this in the story, is what was he writing in the dust? What do you think he was writing in the dust? Do you think it was anything pertinent to the situation? Give me some guesses. Or if you've got a theological treatise you want to state, if Jesus, I'm going to blow my nose. I'm going to put my mic on mute though. While you guys think about that for a second, tell me, what do you think Jesus might have been writing in the dust? Because it doesn't tell us in the Bible. Well, it didn't really help. I'm still stuffy. So, Scotty Allen says, I've wondered that too. What do you think he wrote? I tend to think, totally speculation, if Jesus was truly the Son of God, the God man, the blending of God and humanity, and if he truly could work the miracles he worked, knew that he was God, do you think that maybe when he stooped down and started writing, that he started writing out the sins of these men that were going to stone this woman? So what did he say? As soon as he stood up, the men watched him write. He stood up and he said, let he who is without sin. I could see him pointing at that. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Or was that more a rhetorical question that would have had meaning and he was just scribbling in the dirt? I don't know. Oh, thank you, Michelle. My maroon hat. Thank you. I don't wear it enough. I have a green one and I have a gray ribbed one that's somewhere. I don't know where it is. I haven't seen it since I moved. So it's better than holding it in. Get it out. Blowing my nose? Yeah. I'm just stuffed way up in my sinuses all of a sudden. It wasn't like that all day until this show. So there's something to think about. And the reason I like the way these oracle stories are written and the way we wrote them is it makes you think about the story beyond it just being a Bible story with bathrobes and bed sheets and sandals. Yeah, I need some wasabi. That would help. And we were just at a Chinese place tonight. I could have gotten some. So, yeah, I think so, Scotty A. That would have contributed to him wanting him dead. And I can't speak highly enough of it, even though I haven't seen the whole thing. But this last summer, when I was really laid up and just not doing well, delirious a bit, and I would catch on YouTube clips of that series, The Chosen, about Jesus. I think they did 5 seasons of that show, covering his whole life and ministry. And it was so true to who he was. But what they did with that series was they tried to portray, and I think successfully, Jesus as the real person he would have been. And just so many of those scenes would leave me in tears. Just scenes. And you can look up one of the scenes from The Chosen. In particular, look up the one about the woman at the well. Do you remember that story? Jesus traveled all up to Samaria, all on his own. The Samaritans, part of Israel, but not part of Israel, enemies, but not warrior enemies, just they didn't like each other. And they had their theological reasons. And Jesus goes up there and he's sitting in the midst of the day at the well. A woman comes to draw water. And he says, will you get me a drink, please? And she said, why should I, a Samaritan, give you, a Jew, a drink? Or an Israelite, or however she put it, a Jew, I think. Must have been some recognized things on both of them to tell a Samaritan from a Jew. And he said, he says, if you, I can't remember how the story unfolds in the biblical account, but something about if you were to ask of me, he says, I give you water and you'd never thirst again. She kind of scoffed at him a little bit. She says, you can't even draw your own water for a drink now. And I love that they put it in some vernacular that made it a lot easier to understand. And they start talking, and he says to her something about the issue of her husband's came up, and I can't remember why. And he asked her a question. I think her answer was something about, I don't have a husband. And he says, well, you'd be correct. He says, you've had 5. And all we know in the biblical account is that Jesus mentioned that she'd been married 5 times and that the man she's with now is not her husband. And she said, how would you know this about me? Well, I like what they did in The Chosen, and you'd have to watch this. And she started to scoff, and she was a little disturbed, and she started to walk away. And he says, the first one's name was, and he names him, and he says, his skin, smelled of, orange rind and some kind of spice, and, and this happened and this. He said, and he starts spelling some things out for her. And in essence proves to her that he's the Messiah, just through his words. And the scene is played so beautifully in this series. And so go look it up. Look up The Chosen, Jesus and the Woman at the Well, and watch that scene. It's profound. And there were other scenes. Remember when he meets with Nicodemus, one of the Pharisees, and Nicodemus wanted to believe, and he met Jesus by night on his rooftop, a couple candles going and drinks, and he said, tell me more. I want to know more about who you are. And Jesus talks to him, and that's where the whole thing about being born again comes in. The verse John 3:16, and where Jesus said, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever would come to him and believe would not perish, but would have everlasting life. And Nicodemus asked, how can I be born again? He says, I can't go re-enter my mother's womb and be birthed a second. And Jesus said, it's like, and he gave us a couple of parables and talked to him a bit. And the way they played this scene was so human and so real between Jesus and this man. And it was very uplifting. And the older man, who played Nicodemus, you've seen him in other movies before, and he's crying, and he's happy because he says, I believe I have seen God's Messiah. And he puts his arms around him, and the scene, every scene that I have watched from this series is moving like that, because they took time and effort to write the story the way it probably happened, the kind of language used and the vernaculars used and so on. So I encourage you, go to YouTube, look up The Chosen, and look up the, matter of fact, I'm going to do it for you. I'm going to paste a link. I want you to see it that bad. Let's see. Let's go here and we'll do a search. The Chosen, Woman at the Well. Oh, yeah, here it is. It's right at the top. 7.5 minutes, this scene. And so I'm going to send this link to you. Do with it what you will. Watch it if you want. Ignore it if you want. But this, to me, during a time when I was suffering, not doing well emotionally, and I saw this scene, and it just broke me for the realness of it. Here it is. So take that YouTube link, grab it, watch it, and I'd love to hear what you think of it. So, and on that note, it's now 10:30. I went a whole hour and a half. So I want to thank you all for being here. Thanks for letting me talk and read and ramble. Thanks for hearing me tonight. And you know what? Like the captain's log said tonight, you're still standing. You got this. Whatever's going on, you got it. We all got it. So, have a good night. Thank you for being here. And keep us all in prayer. It's important. And that's all I got to say for tonight. All of you, be well. Talk to you tomorrow night.